Alright, just a little extra on this whole free will subject, which nobody likes. But me, maybe. Nick. But anyway, Pyro said something really dumb in his video. He said, the laws of physics allow matter to make choices. That's what he said. No. Wrong. The laws of physics have things to do with, like, the cause and effect. That's like a law of physics, sort of. At least it should be. And it's sort of one that hasn't been disproven. And it's just so silly. I mean, here's a guy who calls himself a skeptic, and he hinges his whole philosophy on some dopey experiments that are, I don't mean to offend them, dopey. I mean, yes, they're experiments worth doing, but they can't be taken seriously. All right, because they're about as reasonable as me going into, let's say you're in the hospital and I'm going to take your temperature, and I come in there as a doctor and I have my little doctor suit on, and I come in there with a telephone pole sized thermometer that I intend to stick in your ass. I mean, you would say you're out of your mind. That's a crazy experiment. And that's basically what these physics experiments are. I mean, this two-slit experiment, we're trying to observe the behavior of a photon. It can't really be done, all right? It's just not a practical, achievable ambition with our current science, because we have no way of observing it, okay? It just can't be done. So the only way we can do it is just as bad as taking our instruments are, so much bigger than the thing we're dissecting. It's like having a scalpel that's bigger than the thing you're cutting open. It doesn't make any sense. And so these are the most, these experiments, it's not that they can't be taken seriously. They can't be, described as definitive in what they produce as observable results. They just can't be definitive of anything, and they certainly there's just no point in it. So anyway, there's no gaps in cause and effect. There's no proof of anything other than, and so until you come up with that UFO, the actual alien of the non-caused cause, screw you. That's invalid rhetoric. It's nonsense. It's mumbo jumbo. All right. So anyway, getting back to the next part, which is more important. Me and Nick basically agree in the end game of this whole thing. There's no controller that is our consciousness. The controlling is done by our subconscious. But Nick sometimes, like I said, his last description of, like, we're just basically sloshing in the mix, the sea, and we're just going to go bounce wherever it takes us. And yes, our life destiny changes based on the stupidest little events. You either fall into the Grand Canyon or you don't, or somebody kills you in a car accident or they don't. And, your destiny changes all the time. With every little tiny thing that happens, your destiny is changed. And certainly with the big things, it's changed. But the catches in this life thing, the only thing, I'm not saying there's any other thing in here, any real personality. It's all just reflexes. I think I've made that clear about 7,000 times, and so I'll just make it clear again. I don't believe in any non-cause cause. I don't believe in anything called a free will. None of that stuff. I'm just trying to defend the perception of our individual personality, which has an influence on how we engage in the world. And so through our experience, we gain a texture, we gain an influencer of our own, a device capable of conceiving things, mixing things together, and baking some kind of new version of the cake. And so that's another player in the game, is the way our experience is filtered and retained as this individual. And there's no point in not recognizing that each one of us as an individual, and that we all have a different reflector, a different way of interacting in the world. Each one of us has built a different boat out of our brain, and so our brain floats in the bouncy water of the world a little bit different. And some boats acquire the same kind of tools. One might gain a good rudder because it got great influences and they indoctrinated into a nice ethical behavior and a nice methodology of living, and so the person becomes a very competent and capable and reasonable and nice guy kind of a person. and somebody else might acquire that a completely different way, and maybe they bounce around enough and they get enough pieces in their little boat and they're able to construct themselves a rudder of ethics and decency and culture and sophistication. So we can end up at the same place with the same intellectual conclusions, or the same principles of how to live are very similar ones, and we can build them out of different pieces. We can build them from different experiences. We don't have to have the same experience to draw the same conclusion, I guess is all I'm saying. We don't have to have the same exposure. And so it's not all up to this wavy thing. It is, I mean, if you take it a step further back, obviously the waves decided what you're going to have as tools, but the bottom line is that there is something that happens. There's this stored influence that exists in our heads through our life experience. We store influence, and then we can project that influence decades later. So something can happen to us 20 years ago, and we can have a opposite but equal reaction. 25 years later, we can have a reaction based on that action that took place 25 years ago, because it can stay stored in our little brains. And so I just think it's okay to call that something. I'm not fixed on the word I. I'm just saying that our vocabulary, we've used it forever, so it's probably okay to use. But yeah, I mean, people really should understand that there's no I to the I. There's no me in it. There's just there's no thing that's doing the I-ing. The I-ing is just what falls through the conscious plane. The I is built out of a bunch of stored influences and concepts and thinking that's been done and thoughts that have been thought, and that flies through this plane of consciousness, this little veneer of consciousness, this illusion of usness, and it says, yeah, that's what I said. Okay, obviously my brain said it, my neurons said it. Okay, I didn't say it. But this consciousness has to be called something. The plane it shoots through has to be called something. So anyway, it's just a verbiage argument. So I don't know if we can undo the I word. That's all, I guess. I'm just conceding to the fact that we can't undo it. But maybe we should just come up with another word. So if we just want to say my brain, okay, I'll go with that. So I'll try to change my vernacular, and instead of saying I will say my brain says, or my brain experienced, or my brain was when this happened, or whatever. But anyway, we agree. It's hard to describe the concept because, yeah, the language is stuck in an archaic time. I mean, we're stuck with an archaic language that has words in it that shouldn't exist, like spontaneous and random. And maybe I shouldn't exist. It's a little too shorthand to shorthand. So, enough said. A lot longer than I intended, but that happens. Anyway, whatever. Till next time.